These are the last known images of Andrew Gosden. For reasons unknown, the 14-year-old skipped school for the first time in his life and took a train from Doncaster to London. After reaching King's Cross Station, he calmly walked out of the main entrance. He has not been seen since. When Andrew woke up on the morning of September 14th, 2007, he seemed somewhat irritable. Unbeknownst to his parents, he was about to make a decision that would baffle them for years to come. That Friday morning, Andrew got ready for school just like he always did. The 14-year-old was a gifted high school student with a perfect attendance record. He was a mature, intelligent, and shy teenager who never got into trouble. His parents didn't have to worry about him skipping class or misbehaving. Andrew left his home on Littlemore Lane in Doncaster at around 8:30 a.m. He then walked southbound through Westfield Park, heading towards his bus stop. However, on this occasion, it seems as though he had no intention of taking the bus to school. Instead, he walked past the bus stop and continued eastward towards a BP garage station. When he reached the garage, he practically emptied his bank account by withdrawing £200 from the external ATM. Once he was confident that his parents had left for work, he returned home and changed into black jeans and a Slipknot t-shirt. He put his school uniform in the washing machine and placed his blazer on a chair. Shortly afterwards, Andrew left his home with a black shoulder bag, £200, his house keys, and a portable gaming console called a PSP. Notably, he was only wearing a t-shirt. He did not appear to bring a hoodie or a jacket. He also didn't bring a charger for his PSP or the £100 in cash that he had saved up in his bedroom. A neighbour's security camera recorded him walking east along Littlemore Lane at 9:05 a.m. From there, he walked to Doncaster railway station, where he purchased a train ticket to London. When given the opportunity to buy a return ticket for just 50p more, Andrew refused. Instead, he chose to buy a one-way ticket. At around 9:30 a.m, he boarded the train to London. For the next hour and 45 minutes, he sat by himself and quietly played with his PSP. The train arrived at King's Cross Station in London at 11:20 a.m. 5 minutes later, a CCTV camera captured him walking out of the main entrance by himself. What happened next remains a mystery, as no trace of Andrew Gosden or his belongings have ever been found. When it came to light that Andrew had missed his morning classes, his school attempted to contact his parents. Unfortunately, they called another student's parent by mistake and left a voicemail on the wrong phone. Later that evening, his family noticed that he wasn't in his bedroom or playing video games in the basement. When they called his friends, they found out that he had never showed up at school. This revelation panicked his family, as it was extremely out of character. Realizing that something was wrong, his parents quickly contacted the police. Andrew was gifted, shy, and mature. However, he was not street smart. Although he had friends, he only really socialized with them at school. On the weekends, he preferred to stay inside and play video games or read books. He was also interested in bands such as Muse and Slipknot. Andrew was somewhat familiar with London, as he had travelled there with his family a number of times in the past. He also had relatives living in the general area. His decision to skip school and take a train to London was a bizarre deviation from the norm. For the past 16 years, Andrew's parents have tortured themselves trying to think of a good reason why their son would have done such a thing. There were a number of unconfirmed sightings of Andrew in the weeks that followed. The first was at a Pizza Hut on Oxford Street at around 12 p.m. on the day of his disappearance. This appears to be the most credible sighting. When the Pizza Hut employee described the teenager and his mannerisms, Andrew's parents agreed that it sounded like him. 4 days later, on September 18th, someone claimed that they saw a boy matching Andrew's description sleeping on a park bench in Suffolk. The district in question is a 1-hour walk from King's Cross Station. The following day, on September 19th, a witness said that they saw someone who looked like Andrew in Mortlake, which is in southwest London. The boy allegedly left Mortlake Station at around 12 p.m. and walked up Sheen Lane in the direction of Upper Richmond Road. 1 month later, on October 17th, a woman in Covent Garden spoke to a teenager who she believed looked like Andrew. When she asked him if he was the boy on the missing posters, he reportedly gave her a rude response. It is important to emphasize that none of these sightings have ever been confirmed. Past cases have shown us that many sightings of missing people turn out to be false. The police initially focused on Andrew's family. Detectives grilled his father Kevin and put him under a great deal of pressure. They also questioned Andrew's mother, sister, relatives, and school friends. The police tend to release very limited information about active cases. As a result, it is still unclear what steps they took during the early stages of the investigation. We also don't know if there were any additional sightings or if the police have evidence that has not been released to the public. It seems as though they were slow to collect CCTV footage from the area around King's Cross. According to Kevin, it took them too long to request footage from nearby bus stops and the underground station. They also allegedly failed to immediately follow up on reported sightings. Andrew's family has been highly critical of the early stages of the investigation. They believe that the police focused too much energy on them when they should have been collecting more footage in London. Kevin has also claimed that investigators unlawfully recorded him during interviews. Andrew didn't own a phone, as he had lost his Nokia a few months before his disappearance. According to his family, he showed little interest in owning one. When offered a replacement, he chose to keep the money for a new Xbox instead. This isn't really surprising when you consider how limited most phones were back then. Social media apps weren't a thing, and mobile games were very basic. Furthermore, accessing the internet was slow, cumbersome, and expensive. Unless you were texting or calling people, phones didn't have much use. One popular theory is that Andrew was lured to London by someone on the internet. However, this theory goes against all of the known facts. Andrew didn't really use the internet. 2007 was a different world from the one that we live in now. Although social media, smartphones, and online console gaming did exist, they were relatively new and nowhere near as popular. Most people still had basic phones with limited or no internet access. Many households didn't have broadband. Social media websites such as Bebo and MySpace were popular, but they didn't have the same widespread appeal as modern platforms. There is no evidence that Andrew was communicating with someone via the internet. He did not play Xbox Online, and his PSP never connected to the PlayStation Network. The police confiscated and inspected every device that was in his family home. His computer login at school showed that there was no activity. Investigators also contacted his phone and internet service provider, which would have had logs containing his family's online activity. Andrew was intelligent, but there is nothing to suggest that he had any advanced knowledge about computer networks. If he had used the internet, he would have almost certainly left behind some kind of trace. Another theory is that someone groomed Andrew and convinced him to go to London. However, this is highly unlikely. Groomers need continuous access to their victims so that they can slowly gain their trust. They insert themselves into the child's life. They pay them special attention, give them gifts, and isolate them from others. This is a process that requires time and access. There are only 3 places where someone could have had access to Andrew: his home, his neighbourhood, or his school. Andrew did not use the internet, and he didn't own a phone. He also stayed inside on the weekends. He did not partake in any clubs or activities in the months leading up to his disappearance. This means that nobody had access to him outside of school. If someone had groomed him in school, that person would have stuck out, especially in hindsight. His friends or teachers would have noticed that this person was paying special attention to Andrew and spending time with him in private. The police could have also easily checked the school attendance records to see who was missing or who had left early that day. If a groomer was involved, you'd expect to hear about examples where Andrew left his home on weekends and weekday evenings to supposedly meet up with friends. You might also hear about an adult becoming friends with his parents and inserting themselves into the family's life. All in all, there is no evidence to support this theory. Another possibility is that Andrew ran away from home. Personally, I think it is unlikely that a 14-year-old ran away and managed to stay below the radar for so long. If his plan was to leave, then it stands to reason that he would have taken the money that he had saved in his bedroom, or the cash that the family kept for bus fares. Andrew's passport was still at home. He also appeared to leave the house with no coat, jumper, or charger for his PSP. These do not appear to be the actions of someone who is planning to leave home. Trafficking is also sometimes mentioned in online discussions. However, this is based on a misunderstanding of how trafficking usually works. Victims of trafficking are often coerced by someone that they know and trust. Traffickers are like groomers in the sense that they often need regular access to the victim. From their point of view, kidnapping people off the streets and then forcing them into the sex trade is very risky. For example, many pimps start out as love interests. Then, over time, they convince their victims that working in the sex trade will benefit their relationship and help them achieve their future goals. The most persistent myth about human trafficking is that physical force is normally involved. In reality, however, most traffickers use manipulation and other psychological tools. Many people see Andrew's refusal to purchase a return ticket as a sign that he didn't intend to return to Doncaster. Although this may be true, it is important to note that he was likely nervous and flustered at the time. Andrew was a shy teenager. In that moment, he may not have wanted to weigh up return times or get into conversation. Suicide is a possibility, as Andrew's behaviour that day was extremely out of character. Suicide is also one of the leading causes of death for his age group. There was no indication that he was depressed. However, these signs can be very difficult to notice. Although this theory does seem possible, it does raise a number of questions. 1. Why did he put his uniform in the washing machine? 2. Why did he take his house keys? 3. Why London? 4. Why did he need £200? 5. How did nobody see him do it? And 6. Why has his body never been found? Individually, each of these questions has a solid explanation. However, it becomes much more difficult to see it playing out this way when you combine the questions and look at them together. Sadly, like many unsolved cases, it becomes a game of guesswork and gut feelings. 81% of missing children are found within 24 hours. 98% are located within 1 week. This means that Andrew is part of a relatively small group. If you look at previously unsolved cases involving missing children and teenagers, a pattern seems to emerge. In cases of foul play that don't involve a family member, the perpetrator is almost always a sexual predator. Most of these victims were not attacked in public or pushed into a car. Instead, the offender approached them in public, struck up a conversation, and lured them to a private location. These murders were crimes of opportunity. In each case, the victim crossed paths with the wrong person at the wrong time. Such killings are very rare. However, so is someone going missing in a busy city without a trace. Nobody knows what happened to Andrew Gosden, even if they claim otherwise. His family has spent the past 16 years weighing up various theories, and they knew him much better than any content creator or internet detective. People often feel the need to digest these cases and then arrive at a conclusion. However, I think it is important to keep an open mind. Life is full of odd encounters, chance events, and curveballs that you won't see coming. Whenever I get too confident about a theory involving an unsolved case, I try to remind myself of the following quote from Mark Twain: "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." All we know for certain is that Andrew left his home, travelled to London, and then disappeared without a trace.